Hi 7th graders, this is section 6.1, addition and subtraction. Please pause the video and at this time work on the lesson opener, then you can begin the video to check your answers. So in this first example, I see that they have common denominators, so I can add as I see it. 4 plus 2 is 6, and my denominator stays a 7. 6/7 is in reduced form, so I do not have to do anything with it. 5/9 minus 2/9, I see they have the common denominator of 9, so I can subtract. 5 minus 2 gives me 3/9, but I'll want to reduce that by dividing top and bottom by 3 to get 1/3. In number 3, I see I have mixed numbers. So first, let's deal with the fraction portion. I notice that I have a 3 and a 5, not common denominators. I know the common denominator between 3 and 5 is going to be the least common multiple, which is 15. So I'll take 2/3 and multiply it by 5/5 to get 10/15. And I'll take 4/5 and multiply it by 3/3 to get 12/15. Now let's rewrite our mixed numbers so we can add 2 and 10/15 plus 1 and 12/15. Add the whole numbers. 2 plus 1 gives me 3. Then add the fractions. 10 plus 12 gives me 22/15. Now I can simplify that because 22/15 is bigger than 1, so I can change the 3 to a 4. 22 minus 15 gives me 7 left over out of 15. Number 4, we can do similarly, except for its subtraction. So I see 1/6 and 1/2. My common denominator, or the least common multiple of 6 and 2, is going to be 6. So I'll take the 1/2 and multiply it by 3/3 to get 3/6, and I can rewrite it. Oops. And now I can subtract. You might notice that the 1/6 is smaller than the 3/6, so you might choose another method to decide to change this to an improper fraction. Let's try it that way. I'll multiply. 4 times 6 is 24. Plus 1 is 25/6. Minus 1 times 6 is 6. Plus 3 is 9/6. 25 minus 9, and they're both over 6, common denominator, so I can do that. I get 16/6. And when I put that in simplest form, that's going to be 2 and 2/3. In this last one I have as a decimal. So I'm going to stack it so that I can add and line up all the place values. Remember, after any decimal you can add as many zeros as you need to, so I'm going to put the 0 there as my placeholder. I'm going to add to get 68.42. So let's start with adding and subtracting with like denominators. You're first going to add or subtract the numerators. Write the sum or the difference over the like denominator. If necessary, rename the answer in lowest terms. Improper fractions in a sum or difference can, but don't have to be renamed as mixed numbers. As long as your answer is in lowest terms or simplest form, I am not going to be picky as to whether they're improper fractions or mixed numbers. So let's look at this one. Add or subtract as indicated. I see they both have a common denominator of 9. So following my steps, I'm going to do 4 plus 7 and put it over that like denominator. 4 plus 7 is 11 over 9. Now that's in simplest form. I would accept that answer, or you could write it as 1 and 2/9. Okay, this one is subtraction. I see they have a common denominator of 12, so I'm going to subtract the numerators and put it over the common denominator. 11 minus 3 is 8 over 12. I can divide top and bottom by 4 to get 2/3. Use the diagrams to find the sum or difference. Rename the answer in lowest terms. So I'm going to rewrite these as fractions first. I see this one has 2 out of 3 shaded, plus this one has 1 out of 3 shaded. The common denominator is 3, and I'm adding 2 plus 1. 2 plus 1 gives me 3 over 3. In lowest terms, that would be 1. And this one I see 3 out of the 4 boxes shaded. I'm subtracting 1 out of the 4 boxes shaded. Common denominator of 4, and I'll subtract 3 minus 1 to get 2/4. Or, in lowest terms, 1/2. Please pause the video and do 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own, and then you can play it again to check your answers. Number 3, should have gotten 5/7 because 2 plus 3 is 5 over a common denominator of 7. Number 4, you should have gotten 6/9 and then realized that you needed to reduce it to 2/3. Number 5, should have gotten 10 over 15, which again reduces to 2/3. And number 6, you should have gotten 4 over 12, which reduces to 1/3. On your homework, I need you guys to be writing out the problem and the answer, and show me how you simplify if necessary. Now here's our second situation. What if we have things with unlike denominators? First, you're going to rename the fractions as equivalent fractions using the LCM, if that's easiest for you to find, the least common multiple, as the new denominator. If you do not use the least common multiple, that's okay, but your numbers are just going to be bigger and maybe a little bit more difficult to deal with. Then you're going to add or subtract the fractions, and lastly, you're going to reduce it into lowest terms or as a mixed number. Remember I said I don't care if it's an improper fraction or a mixed number as long as it is in lowest terms. So this one is different because I notice that I have different denominators. They're unlike. So I need to figure out a common denominator between 8 and 3. Well, the least common multiple between 8 and 3 is 24. So let's use that. If I multiply 5/8 by 3 over 3, I get 15 over 24. And if I take 2/3 and multiply it by 8 over 8, I get 16 over 24. Common denominator of 24. So this changes my problem to 15 over 24 plus 16 over 24. And I can add as if I have common denominators, since I do now. Keep the denominator the same and add the numerators. 15 plus 16 gives me 31. If I wanted to represent that as a mixed number, I could. That would be 1 and 7 over 24. So again, they're unlike denominators, so I need to figure out the common denominator or the least common multiple between 10 and 15. That's going to be 30. I'll multiply 7 over 10 by 3 over 3 to get 21 over 30. And 4 over 15 times 2 over 2 to get 8 over 30. I'll rewrite my problem. 21 over 30 minus 8 over 30 to get 13 over 30. And that's already in simplest form, so I'll leave it as is. The next few examples have negative numbers. That doesn't change your steps, you just need to remember your positive and negative rules as well. So let's think of the least common multiple between 8 and 5. Well, that's going to be 40. So I'll multiply this one by 5 over 5 to get negative 25 over 40. And 1/5 times 8 over 8 to get 8 over 40. I'll rewrite my problem. I know my common denominator is 40, so I can rewrite that. A negative plus a positive, you can use your calculator to help you, but remember, you're going to take the sign of the one with the bigger absolute value, so it's going to be negative, and I can subtract. 25 minus 8 is 17. I would prefer you to rewrite it like this, so you don't get it confused with your fraction bar if you write it like that. This is already in simplest form, so we can leave it as is. Another one with a negative, and it's subtraction. So watch out for your adding the opposite. The common denominator, the least common multiple between 3 and 9 is going to be 9. So I only have to change the negative 2/3. And now I can rewrite it. Negative 6 over 9 minus 1 over 9. Well, if I wanted to add the opposite, I could rewrite that as negative 6 over 9 plus negative 1 over 9. I know my common denominator is 9, and negative 6 plus negative 1 gives me negative 7, which is in simplest form, so I can leave it as is. Alright, looks like 3/4 can be changed to a common denominator of 12, so I only need to change this fraction. I'll multiply it by 3 over 3 to get 9 over 12. So I have negative 11 over 12 plus 9 over 12. Common denominator of 12. Negative 11 plus 9. Negative 11 has the bigger absolute value. My sign is going to be negative. 11 minus 9 gives me 2. And then I can simplify. Whoops. Where are we at? There we go. By dividing top and bottom by 2 to get negative 1 over 6. Please pause the video, and when you're done with these questions, you can come back on and check your answers. Number 1, as an improper fraction, would be 5 over 4. If you put it as a mixed number, that would be 1 and 1/4. Number 2, negative 1 over 15. Number 3, negative 7 over 12. And number 4, 1 over 40. Alright, so these ones, I have mixed numbers and they do not have common denominators. So you can do it one of the two ways that I showed you in the lesson opener. Let's start with the second way that I showed you. If I do 1 times 6 and then add 5, 1 times 6 is 6, 6 plus 5 is 11. You can do the same here. 4 times 9 plus 4. 4 times 9 is 36. 36 plus 4 is 40. Okay, and I can go from there. I can see the common denominator between 6 and 9 is going to be 18. So I can take 11 over 6 and multiply it by 3 over 3 to get 33 over 18. And I can take 40 over 9, multiply it by 2 over 2 to get 80 over 18. I can rewrite my problem. And now that I have common denominators, I can add 33 plus 80 gives me 113, which I can simplify to 6 and 5/18. Let's look at this one. Maybe this time I only want to change the fractions and I don't want to change them to improper fractions. That's fine too. So it looks like my common denominator is going to be 8. I'll multiply this one by 2 over 2 to get 2 over 8. Rewriting my problem, I would have 5 and 2/8 minus 2 and 3/8. So I notice that I have 2/8 here and 3/8 here. That's going to give me a negative. Well, I can change it again. I can take 1 away from the whole number and add another 8 to the eighths. 2 plus 8 gives me 10/8. And now when I subtract, I won't get a negative. 4 minus 2 is 2. And 10 minus 3 gives me 7/8. So you may prefer to look at it that way. But either method, in example 7, changing them both to improper fractions, or in example 8, leaving them as mixed numbers and making sure you have common denominators, both will work. Let's try a couple with decimals. So remember, whenever we do decimals, we have to make sure we line up all of the place values. So I'm going to put the 8 in the tenths place, 3, 4, and add a 0 for my placeholder. Doesn't change my number because it's after a decimal. 127.6, and I'm going to put 2 zeros for my placeholders. I'm adding all of these. So now that they're stacked, I can just add. To get a final answer of 178.618. Okay. Watch out for this one because I have negatives and I have subtraction. Remember, you can rewrite this as adding the opposite. Now that they're both negatives, I can add them like normal. And I know that my sign is going to be negative. So again, I'm lining up my place values. So I'm going to place a 0 after the 5. And I'm going to add like normal. And since they're both negative, it's a negative. Okay, and this last one, I'll line up and stack it. This is subtraction. I'm going to place a 0 and a decimal point. I'm allowed to do that, it doesn't change the number. And now I can subtract. To get 4.6. please pause the video, finish skill check 3, and then come back to check your answers. Number 1, 3 1/9. Number 2, 12.885. Number 3, 6 23/40. And number 4, 9.37. So your notes should be completed for section 1. You may now begin the section 1 assignment that's listed on your assignment sheet that was passed out today, and it's also on Google Classroom. That's due tomorrow.